Hi, I'm Dan Komisky. Welcome back to Connecting the Dots. Today we're blessed with Heather Gillette. She's here to tell us all about the transition house and all the things that we can find out about what we used to do in Chatham to help people find housing. Heather, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time. Yeah. So can you tell me about the transition house?
Well, Transition House started in 1991. It was the idea actually of many people here in the community. Ann Coulter from Family Services Kent actually was one of the, I believe, the founding members. But there was a lot of people involved. A lot of the Ursuline nuns were involved in that. Martin Forster, Joanne Forster from the St. Clair Catholic School Board teachers. They were on the original board of directors and put a lot of time into Transition House. A lot of people put the time in. I came, actually they started this probably back in '89. It didn't open until it was late 1990, I believe, when it first opened, but only as a daytime program. And then in '91 they had overnight, residential overnight. And they started, I believe, with 6 beds. I came in February of '92.
Okay.
Actually, I had worked at Westover Treatment Center out in Thamesville prior to that. My background is in addiction counseling, chemical dependency, substance abuse. So when I left Westover, I put my name in at Transition House when I heard about it. They were looking for people, and so I put my name in. I felt that it would be a good fit for me because I could certainly identify with the youth. Growing up myself, I left home just shortly before my 16th birthday, so certainly understood the need for youth to have a safe place to go. And fortunately for myself and a number of my friends, actually, we had a friend that his family opened their house up to us. So we had a safe place to go and an adult to talk to that would just listen.
That must have been amazing to be able to walk into a role like that, gave you that experience again.
I was really, quite interested in getting involved in it. I didn't know, because they were looking for somebody that had a BSW, and of course I did not have. My background was in addiction, so I didn't have that BSW per se. But went for the interview, and fortunately for me, I was the one that was chosen. Part of the reason they chose me is they felt from my interview and sharing with them that I could certainly identify with the young people and would be able to, be kind of at their level, to hear what their needs were and to be able to, kind of guide them in a direction. And from that point on, I was there from February of '92 until May of 2022. So I was there 10 years.
Oh, okay, 2002.
I'm sorry.
2002.
2002.
So 92 to 2002. Okay.
Yeah, so I was there for 10 years.
And so backing up a little bit, so what was it like in Chatham, in this area, in terms of homeless? Like if you were to step outside yourself and say, well, 20, 30 years ago, this is what it was like, and today this is what it's like, because I don't remember it feeling like it was kind of as prevalent as it is now. What were you seeing back then? It
was prevalent, but not to the extent that it is now. I mean, we have a problem here in Chatham.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And we did back then, but it was more with youth, okay, that I saw.
Okay.
Of course, that was the focus of Transition House too, but what we were seeing is that these are young people that weren't involved in the children's aid system, okay? These were 16 to 21-year-olds that were coming from homes where there was possible abuse. A lot of times it was single moms that now have a new partner, and the new partner would, I love you, but I don't love your kids, kind of thing.
Right.
So the kids were
not very fair.
Told to move out, kind of thing. A lot of the young people came to us that there was some type of an addiction in the family. so there were different reasons why these kids were coming, but they were more in crisis. Okay, they were homeless, but they were in crisis because they didn't know where to go, because they didn't fit into that children's aid system.
Right.
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 Okay, so they're 16 years old, and I'm on my own. What do I do?
Right.
And so that was the focus of why it was started. And as I said, they started with 6 beds. And by the time I had left, we were up to 12 beds. 6 males, 6 females. And we were co-ed, which, everybody, that's, but it worked. We had 2 floors. The house was at 135 Park Street in Chatham, and a nice big old Victorian home that had 2 floors, and we had the alarm on the door, so we knew, oh, wait a minute, somebody's going downstairs in the middle of the night.
Yeah, it probably stopped a few problems.
Yeah. So, but it worked very, very well. The young people were very grateful that we were there. In the time that I was there, we put 750 kids through that house in the time that I was there.
750?
750 kids.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. And so who all was eligible for the transition
Any
house?
youth 16 to 21.
So they would just call and say, I've got a problem.
They would call.
I need somewhere to be.
They would show up at the door. We would get referrals, from the different agencies, whether it be Salvation Army, the Women's Center, okay?
Yeah.
Sexual Assault Crisis Center. Some of these kids were sexually abused, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And, we would get the call. I think probably, and then some of them, like, we would go out too. Our staff, we would go out at night and, go under the bridge, go through Tecumseh Park, go to places where
Wow.
and find, the youth that were camped out, kind of thing.
And so you find someone camped out in Tecumseh Park, and you find them a bed, and you've got a space for them, and then what's the end result? Like, what are you hoping to do with that kid? Obviously, you don't want them to be in crisis, but what? Right. So the program itself, where did you want to go?
Where we wanted to be able to take them, or have them take themselves. They did the work. We did the guidance. Mm-hmm. And it would depend on what their needs were. Some of them were still in school, but were bouncing from friend to friend, couch to couch kind of thing, and then would end up, sometimes they would end up, under the bridge.
Right.
But once the word started getting out there that we were there, and the kids they could self-refer. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Oh wow! So they can call in.
So they could call. They could come to the door and say, "I need a place to stay."
Amazing.
And if we had a bed, and that they could stay up to 30 days. Mm-hmm. Okay. And there was the odd time where some of them needed a little bit longer. A lot of them in that period of time, we were able to get them set up with social services so that they could then get into an apartment.
Right. On
their own. And at that time, there were apartments available. That would not happen today.
No.
There's not the housing, there's not the apartments, there's not affordable apartments for them. And hence the motels that we have.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the emergency shelters and everything else in town, yeah.
Okay. But at that time, we had a list of rules that they would follow. Mm-hmm. And actually, when we first started the program, I was very fortunate because, as I said, they opened the residential portion in late '91. I came in February of '92, and I was very fortunate to be able to bring a lot of the programming that was there. And one of the things that we felt was absolutely necessary was they had to have their education.
Right.
So if they weren't in school, then we provided a correspondence program for them. And that took some time. That didn't happen right off the bat, but that, eventually we had, every day we had a number of young people coming back from 1 till 3 where we did, correspondence with them. And
Amazing.
we had somebody in-house that could teach, the curriculum for them.
So they're at least working towards their
right.
their OAC at the time,
That's
probably
right.
not grade 12. But
So, well, no, some of them did get their grade 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Okay, because we followed the curriculum from the school board.
Right.
So, And you know, it was very important also that that they have structure, because a lot of them were coming from homes where, you know, there hadn't been any structure. And for a lot of these kids, that's all they wanted. They wanted structure.
So meals at the same time.
Meals at the same time.
TV time,
they
studying.
They were up by 6 in the morning. They had to shower, do their chores, have breakfast, get ready for either going to school, going to work, or go out job searching. And that was part of our rules, but that was also part of them being on social assistance, was that they had to do job searching.
Right.
Okay. So they had to be out during the day. We weren't a flop house. You've got to be productive.
Yep.
Okay. And then they could be back by 4 in the afternoon. They all had chores. Some of them would be cooking meals. Some of them would be, cleaning up in the house, or, doing yard work, whatever. So, they had chores that they also had to.
So the chores were probably focused on what had to be done to maintain the house.
To maintain the house.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That makes sense. That makes great sense.
And we all sat and had supper together. That was very important. They needed that structure. They needed to know what a family atmosphere was like, because some of them hadn't had that for many years.
Yeah.
And then they could leave again after supper. They had to be in by 10 o'clock at night. And for teenagers, that's not always easy.
No.
But they complied. Not so much that they complied. They knew that this was a safe place for them to be, and they were willing to follow the rules to be there.
Yeah.
We had some young people that came in with addiction issues, and so we would get them involved with an addictions program, whether it be in town, out of town. We dealt a lot with the Portage program up in outside of Guelph with Teen Challenge.
And what was that?
Okay.
What was the Portage program?
It was an addiction treatment center for youth, strictly for youth. Okay.
Is that still around?
I'm not sure.
Do you know?
Actually, now that I'm retired, I've kind of lost touch.
Of course.
But at that time, we took a number of our young people there, and a very good program.
Good.
Very good program. We had one young fellow that went to treatment up in Ottawa, so we tried to connect them with what they needed. We worked with a lot of the agencies in town that, as I said before, the Salvation Army, whether it be for a trustee, because they needed to learn basic needs. And part of the basic needs is, learning how to do banking.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to manage your money now. You've got a limited amount of money, and you've got to learn how to manage that. And for some of them, having that trustee to help them maneuver their money, that was a needed service.
Yeah. I think that'd be beneficial for. I don't know why they don't do more of that in high school, and I think they're starting to now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a basic need. You need to know how to write a check. You need to know how to open a bank account. You need to know how to have a budget.
Yeah.
And so many people weren't taught that. So I think that we felt that was an essential part for them, is to be able to be in control, number one, of their own finances, to be able to make their own decisions. And hey, you've got to make this last for 30 days. And if you make decisions that you run out in the middle of the month, that's your decision. You can do that. But then there's consequences for the next 2 weeks. Right?
That's right.
Because you don't have money.
That's right. That's right.
So there, it was simple basic needs, but it was stuff that some of them had not been taught.
So you teach them this, and then you set them out into the world, and then hopefully they can learn how to take the next steps themselves.
Exactly.
So what did success look like for the client?
For the client. For them.
For the kids, yeah. For the actual kids that you're helping.
For their success was just being able to have a place that they felt safe.
Yeah.
That they could be on their own, but they knew they could come back to us for guidance. Not necessarily to stay in the residential program, but they could come back anytime.
Did you see a lot of that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I would imagine if you're a resource to kids that are trying to...
We had a drop-in program, what we call drop-in. But a lot of them came back for supper a couple times a week.
Yeah.
A lot of them came back just to talk to one of the counselors or one of the workers. We had child and youth workers. So they were able to just come in and say, I just need to talk about something. And they knew that that door was always open to them. Once they were involved with us, we were there.
Amazing.
Whatever time, day or night, we were open 24 hours a day, and hopefully open some doors for you to make that happen. But you've got to do the work, and they did. They wanted something better. And many of the young people that I'm still in touch with are not so young. They're still my kids, kind of thing. You know what I mean? I mean, because we've been in, they were with us. Some of them, as I said, definitely 30 days. Some of it would be out in a week. They just needed that stopgap to be able to get them get them in touch with the right services in order to get them where they needed to go.
Yeah.
Some of them were fortunate. Not many were fortunate to have a family member that would say they would take them in. That didn't happen. That was rare. That was very rare. But our program became so well known that we were getting referrals from London, Toronto. We had one young person that had landed here from Somalia. Excuse me, and Toronto sent him to us. And he was with us a few weeks until we could get him, situated and into an apartment of his own, kind of thing. So we were the program grew in notoriety, I guess, of what we were doing here in Chatham, Kent.
Was there anything else like that in the province that you were aware of? Like, was there other houses that you were in contact with? Maybe share knowledge with, or share,
Well, I mean, there certainly is. There's Covenant House in Toronto. There are other shelters. I actually sat on the Ontario Association of Hostels Board of Directors for a number of years. So there were shelters in Toronto, a lot of them through Salvation Army. There's Dixon Hall in Toronto. There was actually about 4 in Toronto that I knew of at that time. So I mean, there were places from all over, but not necessarily the same program as us, but it's the same type thing.
Affiliated with kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which was good that we had those contacts with each other, because we could kind of support one another in. Because let's face it, nobody wants to have homeless in their city.
No, including the homeless.
Okay, exactly. So it was nice to have those support systems that you could bounce, ideas off of, but we could gain support. And one of the things that we worked very hard with community and social services. At one point here, we were getting underfunded, and I knew that because I sat on that board. And I knew what other shelters in other areas were getting. And we were definitely underfunded. And unfortunately, it was a bit of a battle getting social services here to recognize it. No, they're receiving $45 a day. That's the per diem. And we're only getting $12.50. Why is that?
Right.
Per client.
Right.
And actually, I was fortunate enough that Marion Boyd, at that time, who was in politics, she very much liked our program and what we were trying to accomplish, and she got me she actually drove me to Toronto to meet with John Baird, who was the Minister of Community Social Services at that time, and I actually met with him, but I also met with the NDP leader at that time. Unfortunately, he's passed away now, and I can't remember his name. The
national leader, or a local MP.
The provincial.
I wouldn't be able to pull that one out of my hat.
Okay. But in doing so, it only took about 2 weeks, and we were up to the $45 a day.
Yeah.
Per diem. So, which meant that that covered the cost of them staying at Transition House. They also received an allowance through that, or what I say allowance. A portion of that went to them.
Yeah.
And so it was things like that. There was a lot of politics. We were very fortunate though here in Chatham that this is a very giving community, very, very giving community. We ran that house 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, housed 12 young people on a budget of $675,000 a year because of the donations that we received, whether it be food donations, clothing donations, toiletry donations, cash donations. So the community saw the need, but I was out there speaking all the time as well, and to service clubs, to church groups, making sure that they were aware of, we're not just bringing these kids off the street and letting them do whatever or not. There's a set of rules. There's expectations. There's responsibilities that they have to follow in order to be able to have that spot in the house.
Well, and you're giving them the tools they need to have. Thank you, Heather, for that. So when did the transition house shut down?
I left in May of 2002. And at that time, actually, CAS had become involved. The board of directors at that time felt that, we needed to assist children's aid clients as well. Because, of course, there's a higher per diem.
Right.
Through children's aid. I really felt that was not going to be beneficial because there was already housing for them. And they didn't have to follow any of the program that we had at Transition House, which was going to make it very hard for our young people. Well, hey, how come they get all this and we're getting this? And how come they don't have to go to school? How come they don't have to do this? How come that? And we do. And I really felt that it was not going to be a good fit. So I ended up leaving. And it was shortly after, maybe, I don't know, I'm going to say about 4 or 5 months after that it did close. It then reopened a short time after that under a bit of a different function. It was still working with youth and housing youth, but then it was strictly CAS. So, unfortunately, the youth that needed it it was no longer part of.
So the nuts and bolts of giving them an understanding of, what tools they need to accomplish, to move on in the world, like we were just speaking about.
Right.
That wouldn't be part of that program.
No, unfortunately. So, and then I think that program ran, because I by that time I was now working down in Windsor, so I kind of lost touch with what was happening here. But I think it ran for maybe a year and a half after that, and then closed. So unfortunately, the house has been sitting empty now for a good number of years.
I'm sorry. Excuse me for a second. Take some more of this disgusting green stuff. Yeah, I've been looking. So the house has been sitting empty.
Yes.
Let's just give it 2 or 3 seconds here and we'll start again. So yeah, the house has been sitting empty since. And I mean, I know when we spoke on the phone, really, has anything been opened up that you know of? I've looked, I haven't really seen anything for kids.
Nothing for youth.
Not
that I'm aware of. Nothing here in Chatham-Kent for youth. I mean, there are drop-in centers. I mean, Dresden has a drop-in center. Tilbury has a drop-in center. Blenheim has a drop-in center. I believe Ridgetown still does. So, like, they're trying. The communities are all trying to have these, but nothing residential. And that's the piece that's missing for these young people.
Okay.
Is that residential piece. And not just for youth. I mean, obviously, we're seeing a much larger homeless population in Chatham-Kent than I've ever seen. So, but that piece for youth, it's not there.
Well, we can keep people right out of the system if you give them the tools they need.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I really want to thank you. I want to thank you for your time, and I want to thank you for what you did for those kids.
Oh, thank you.
It matters. It matters to a whole bunch of people. And I mean, I think what we need now is we need more people to step up, and we need programs like this brought back to Chatham so that we can help these kids.
Absolutely. I always said if I won a lottery, that would be my first thing. I would be starting something again for youth. I might not be the one running it now, but I would make sure that there was something out there for the youth in this. And one of my dreams would be a tiny homes village in Chatham, Kent. It would go so well. It would help solve the homeless problem here in Chatham, Kent. And again, but you would want to have programming for those people involved too. Like there would be, it's not just we're going to give you a place. Here's a house. They haven't earned that.
No.
You understand? If that makes sense to you.
Well, then they start just tearing it apart.
That's right.
If you haven't earned it.
That's right. But if they work towards it, help us build these tiny homes. You want to be part of this program? Help us build, help us maintain. Have a community such as a co-op kind of type community, tiny homes for people. That would work here in Chatham, Kent.
That's an interesting thought. I hope that I can have you back on and we can talk about
Absolutely.
that. I like that idea. Okay, well, thank you very much again.
And I'll keep buying lottery tickets.
I'll keep buying them too. We'll figure it out between the two of us. If we both win, we have to share it.
Oh, well, okay. We can do that. Good.
Thanks so much, Heather.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me in.
Yes, nice to meet you.
Good.
All right.